Okay, welcome everybody to tasting number 167. This is actually going to be a really fun journey. I hope that you guys get a lot out of this and maybe continue down this path because it's, I think, going to be really, really interesting. And just to give you a little background on how this idea came about, we had a trip in May with Greg Schwartz to this the Water of Life director, to the Spirit of Speyside Festival. And a couple of our guests on that trip during COVID did a similar tasting. They did it much faster. It's, I think, just a group of 6 of them based all over the US, and they did it on Zoom. But they were finding very kind of hard to find bottles. They weren't the core kind of expressions. I mean, some of their bottles were a couple $1,000s a bottle. They weren't cheap expressions. Not that we're doing cheap expressions, but their level of what they were tasting from each distillery was much more rare. But it was just, the idea of it was really cool. And so when we got back from that trip, the one person who kind of organized it all, he sent me his spreadsheet, and it listed all of the current and closed distilleries in Scotland. Now, they were able to find a lot of bottles from closed distilleries, which is pretty hard. Some are easier than others, but price becomes the issue. So we're gonna try. We'll see what happens. We might have to hold some raffle parties or something to pay for a bottle or something like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But we're going to do this journey. And a couple of things before we get started, because I really want you to just to open your mind. We're going to go A through Z, and we want to throw out any past ideas that maybe you have about a distillery. We're going in kind of fresh. I want you to think about the history of these places. How old are some of these? As we'll see, a lot of these are younger. There are a lot of new distilleries in Scotland now. And what I did is I tried to pick fun expressions, maybe not the regular core line, or maybe kind of more hard to find type bottlings. But really just keep an open mind is all I can say. This is all about learning. It's all about kind of, just thinking about their history and where the grain comes from. And we're going to show a few videos. We're actually going to be starting with a pretty special dram. So 5 of these bottles I did pick up just a little over a week ago in Scotland. Only one of them was donated, or I'm buying it from Holly, but it came from her personal collection, which is the last one that we're having tonight. But the other 5 I did get in Scotland. Some of them I was able to buy at the distillery. Some of them I had shipped from a distillery to a place where I knew I could pick it up. And then some of them I bought from shops. So this should be a lot of fun. I'm already thinking about the next one, which is in December. There's also some really great drams in that one that I'm looking at. So the other thing to think about is if you can't join on the day, but you still want to continue on this journey, just order a kit. I'm going to be recording all of these, and I'm going to be putting them online. So if you can't make it, but you still want to be able to participate, just get a kit and do it later. And then whatever's left, if there is whiskey left, I am going to keep that and create a history of all of them. And then those even might go for sale at some point too. We'll see. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and start with a really cool bottle. This was, so from my last trip, we started in Edinburgh, and then we visited Holyrood and the Port of Leith distillery in Edinburgh, and then we made our way up to the Speyside. And one of the great stops on the way up to the Speyside is Aberfeldy. You have a few different choices when you're heading north, where you can stop and have some whiskey, have some lunch. So Holly actually had arranged a really great visit at Aberfeldy. This is her home in a way. This was her brand that she represented for a long time, one of Bacardi's distilleries. But Aberfeldy was probably the one that you pushed the most, I would think, especially with the cocktails and the honey and all that stuff.
Never pushed. Never pushed anything.
Okay. You were just the ultimate salesperson. Let's put it that way.
No. It's the one I talked the most about. Yeah.
Extolled.
We got tired of hearing about Aberfeldy. Let's put it that way. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, never.
Never. No, for sure, never. Because it's really wonderful stuff. So we were at the.
Does anyone remember when Charles had me up to present the portfolio with the Whiskey Club, and it was maybe
That was at
30 degrees and we were behind?
Yeah.
It was 30 degrees inside.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
So
was
I knew you loved my brands.
We did.
yeah, that was really
Cold.
it was like being in Scotland in winter, you know. So
No one could taste anything.
I think it was covered, but it wasn't heated.
yeah, it was enclosed, but it wasn't heated. So we stopped at Aberfeldy, and I knew I was going to find a bottle there. I just wasn't sure what it was going to be. They had a few, actually. They had some of their exceptional casks, which we have tasted in the past. And then I kind of just gravitated towards this one. This is a hand fill. They did have a hand fill. Now I didn't fill it myself. I just bought one that was already filled. I didn't feel like doing it at the time, but this one is a vintage. They have a vintage number on the side, vintage 2001. So this is a 23-year-old Aberfeldy. It is natural cask strength at 50.2%, so not too crazy high. There were 200 bottles of this. This was filled on October 6th, 2024, so just a couple weeks ago. Obviously, by looking at the color of this first one, we know it's sherry, and Oloroso is what they told me at the distillery. So Holly, you want to go ahead, and what I'd like to try and do with each of these distilleries is give a little history, kind of background, you know, how Aberfeldy maybe came to be. I know we've heard it a couple times, but we're just going to do it again because we had a lot of new people joining us. So we know, or some of us know, it's the home of doers, but we'll let you explain all of that. You know, maybe just in a few minutes, just kind of give us the overview of Aberfeldy.
Sure, I thought Aberfeldy was second for some reason, so I don't feel prepared. Luckily, Leo stopped screaming like 30 seconds ago. So Aberfeldy is a Highland malt. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours north of Edinburgh, up in like the Pitlochry area, up near Blair Athol. And the reason that it's there is that John Dewar, who actually took over and ran a pretty big grocery store in Perth, Scotland, was making really cool blends. Similar story to Johnny Walker and Ballantyne's and Buchanan's. A lot of them were grocers, and they were blending teas, and they were buying barrels of whiskey and making their own blends. And it was almost like a growler system. You would come in and fill your jug with their blend, and that's how these brands became popular. They were always a blend. So he became pretty well known in the Perth area and wanted to control supply. And he was living in Perth at the time, but he had been sourcing whiskey from a distillery just up the Patilly Burn that's now closed. But he knew that that was good whiskey, so he rented that distillery and then eventually built his own. He was born down the road too as a crofter. I think he was like one of 12 children, but his the name of the village where he was born is actually still there, but it's called Dull, Scotland. So it was a big deal for him to be able to grow this for his family and build the distillery. So his two sons actually ended up taking over. He passed away and they built the distillery. And since that time, in the late 1890s, Aberfeldy has been in the Dearg's blend. What percentage, we don't know for sure, but they call it the heart of the Dearg's blend. So it's the core malt. And Aberfeldy is known to be the golden dram, or honeyed sweetness. And if you've had the core range, the 12, 16, or 21, they're all matured in a mixture of bourbon and sherry. So there's a lot of sweetness naturally in the new make spirit of Aberfeldy. And then it's matured in the two different styles of casks. But lately we've seen a lot of cool new finishes from them as well, which they never really did. When I worked for the company, they were kind of relaunching the malts portfolio, which was Aberfeldy and the 4 other distilleries. So Aberfeldy is definitely a great kind of all-around sipper. And something to look forward to too is that their core range, they're bumping up to 43% ABV as well in the next year. So they're really putting a big focus on the distillery. But what's cool about visiting is that it is the heritage site of Dearg's. So they have a global heritage manager that has sourced all of these historical artifacts and desks that he worked at, original letters when they sold their first casks into the US for Dearg's, the plans for the distillery, all of that. So it's a museum of sorts too. So if you're just interested in the history of Scotch whiskey, it's really, really cool to go see all of that Dearg's history. So Aberfeldy still to this day is, and forever will be, in the Dearg's blend. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a pretty crushable whiskey, and when it casts strength, I think it's just a really great representation of a Highland malt, a little heavier than Speyside, but does really well with sherry as well.
What percentage of that production goes into the Dearg's blends, and what do they bottle as a single malt?
You know, I'd have to ask for updated numbers, Peter, because the single malt has grown so much in popularity. So I don't know how they're handling that. But it was always about 20% went to the single malts. And the rest goes to, and they have, what was it, Charles? 4 pot stills?
Yep.
And they're quite large. So they're making probably around 3, 4, probably can make up to 5 million liters of new make spirit per year. So they'd be considered a medium-sized distillery. And if we're all familiar with blends. I don't know the ratio of grain whiskey, but most kind of Dearg's white label, Johnny Walker red label, you're looking at 60, 70, maybe even 80% of that is grain or corn whiskey. So, you know, they're able to take those few million liters and make it go a long way into the Dearg's blends as well. But I'm not sure how that maybe has changed. If maybe there's less going into Dearg's as the single malt grows, that would be a good question for them.
Yeah. I mean, 20%, it would be a lot if they're making that much. So,
yeah. And the US market is the focus for Aberfeldy, where some of their other single malts, again, smaller distilleries, and their focus is not in the States. Like the Devron or Macduff, the focus is in Italy and in France. So they realize that their single malt distilleries are small, so they're sold globally, but they focus each one in a specific market. And Aberfeldy is focused on the US market.
So this whiskey is extremely Oloroso sherry.
Yeah.
It might be over sherry in my opinion. I mean, I also have a dram that has like the pieces of the wood at the bottom of it. I think my dram is a lot darker than yours.
Well, you remember, Charles, it was a hogshead, so it wasn't even a sherry butt. So it was a smaller cask. Not small, but smaller than a.
It is, okay. That was like their, as if like the
unchill, unfiltered. Yeah.
Right, yeah, because it's a handful, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's straight out of the barrel. But like Holly said, it is a smaller barrel. So it's like a hogshead versus a butt. A hogshead's about half the size of a butt. So you're gonna get even more intense Oloroso.
Was
notes.
it fully matured in there or is
You
it?
know, it doesn't, I kind of remember them saying it was finished.
Yeah, but it was long. It was like 4 years.
Yeah,
That's motor oil.
It's like pitch black.
When you poured yours, and I saw it next to.
Yeah, a lot of the sweetness is, I mean, it's very rich and good, but that honeyed sweetness can't survive in that sherry
there's
hogshead for
rich-
that long.
to it.
What
know,
what I like is a
coffee.
lot of the sherry bombs have kind of a funky note. This doesn't,
no funk, yeah.
no funk at all. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really clean.
Chocolate and coffee.
Yeah.
Charles, you're gonna have to pour the bottom of that bottle through a coffee filter.
I mean, look how dark it is. I'll just throw it back. I won't even think about it.
You might get splinters in your throat.
I already have plenty of splinters in my throat, trust me, so.
You don't see many distilleries doing that though, right? Because I mean, Blackadder with all of their they let it fly with all the charcoal and stuff in the.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because when you do a hand fill, and they have the same mechanism that all of them have attached to the barrel, you never see the char.
Yeah,
coming out.
that's what I thought was.
And
so
I, you
odd
know,
that
when I
there's
bought
no
this,
char.
I never even thought to look to
Yeah.
see if there was sediment or anything at the bottom.
Maybe
Um,
they finish off the barrels themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that these were filled before they even put the barrel out there,
Yeah.
or I don't know. It's,
You just never see that.
Now you're really sorry that you didn't hand fill your own, right?
yeah, it is bottle number 200. I don't know.
Also, you don't feel.
I thought he
bottle
filled
like
it.
that.
I didn't fill this one. Yeah, I bought it already filled.
Says it was filled by the Angel.
Now this is not a cheap bottle. This was close to $300. It was 240 pounds or something like
They
that,
charge a
or
full of
220
wood,
pounds. It was up there. I know the final charge was like 286 or something like that. So
When I was working for the brands though, in almost over 4 years, only 3 single casks of Aberfeldy were ever released into the US market. So 3 single casks at cask strength. So it's just very rare to taste Aberfeldy at cask strength. But I was surprised to see that Dramore has a Patilli. They call it the Patilli, which is the water source of Aberfeldy. They have an Aberfeldy, I think 10 or 12-year-old that they bottled, and it's really rare to find Aberfeldy in independent bottlers too, which is where you would find it at cask strength, which they just came out with one, which is kind of cool. But yeah, you pay a premium to taste Aberfeldy at natural cask strength.
What,
we haven't tasted
what
it.
is the squirrel? Why is
Well,
there
I
a
mean, that's
symbol
the
of
old
squirrel?
packaging.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the 12-year-old from, oh, where do we go?
Yeah,
Come from somewhere.
that's
The guy who bottled it.
super
Come on, Peter,
original.
get-
That's
come on,
early
put that-
2000s.
Yeah, that's 40%.
Yeah, one other note about this special bottle. It was bottled by a member's family, which is pretty cool. The Angel actually bottled this. It says on the side here, he's not really looking like he understands me right now. There he is.
There you go.
There he is. David Angel, one of your relatives bottled this bottle, just saying. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I have a lot
of questionable older relatives, so can't say I'm surprised.
Just making sure
Actually,
everybody.
a serious question. Holly, you said that they don't usually have the cask strength single casks in the United States, but this one was the United States anyway. This was at the distillery. So are they,
Right.
do they actually release any into the US?
I haven't, as of late, I mean, I haven't been following super close, to be honest, but they've done more, not cask strength, but 46% releases with different finishes. So
Mhm.
they've done some red wine cask finishes. We had a 15-year-old. They've done 18-year-old, I think, Madeira finish.
Yeah.
So they're doing more finishes as their special releases in the US. I have not seen a cask strength release from the distillery here since my time. Yeah.
Well, that's one that's actually, it took me a little bit to get accustomed to it, but it's really grown on me. It's got a lot of depth to it. The sherry is there big time, but you can get the spirit. You just have to let your palate adjust to this one a little bit. I think at first, my first couple sips were just way too much sherry. But that's also the first whiskey I've had today. So
Drink lots of water so that your palate is okay for the last whiskey. I had to throw that out there. I'm nervous that.
and on the last whiskey, just so everybody knows, we're all going to take one sip and then we're going to stop the recording. And then we can say whatever's on our mind. So
Oh,
just setting it up. She's so nervous about the last whiskey. It's
I
crazy.
thought you were gonna say.
Well, it's just a special bottle for me. And it's 46%. So being last, well, maybe everyone will love it because your palates will be shot.
They're lower proof, so
Yeah.
you're okay. You're okay. All right, everybody good with the Aberfeldy? Yeah. All right, we're gonna move on to Aberlour. I did print off some information just so I can read some history, and I do have a little video to show on Aberlour. We actually just stayed in Aberlour. That's where the group was a couple weeks ago, literally up the hill from the distillery. They're actually closed right now for visiting. The visitors, the little shop that they have was open, which was the old distillery manager's house or space. So I was able to buy this next bottle, but the distillery is going through a renovation right now. They're actually doubling in size. And Holly and I did go for a little hike up a path kind of behind the distillery we were actually going to some waterfalls, but it went right behind the distillery, and the construction is quite amazing. It's very modern compared to the old, which is sad because they're definitely losing some of their tradition with this expansion, but it's going to be pretty huge. The company that has been contracted to create the expansion just filed for bankruptcy though a few weeks ago. So construction has stopped in its tracks. Also, 4 or 5 other distilleries have stopped in their tracks right now with expansion, all under the same construction company. One of the ones that stopped, which is a monster, is Port Natruan, which is the new distillery on Islay, which is gigantic. And they just literally stopped in their tracks on building. So they're really struggling right now to find another contractor to build these distilleries. Yeah, but so Aberlour goes way back to the 1830s. Well, actually a little later, more like the 1860s. It was established in let's see here, what was the actual year? Shoot. Of course, it doesn't say on my thing here. Yeah, so the whiskey was really being produced in the 1870s. So we go back to about the 1870s. Now they were making whiskey before then, but really not under the traditional license name. But then it went through a bunch of different family members. But what we know Aberlour today for is it's part of the Chivas, the Pernod Ricard group.
1880.
So one of the things I want you to think about as we go through these A to Z is how is the whiskey being used? So we talked about Aberfeldy, and as far as we know, 80% or so is being used towards blends, 20% for single malt. So what you want to think about is how are these distilleries being used? Are they really being used just for single malt, or are they workhorses for blends? Because it really can make a difference on how you approach and appreciate these whiskeys. You know, some of them aren't meant to be had as single malt. Aberlour was. Aberlour has been making single malt, being sold as single malt for a long time. It really wasn't, though, until the 1970s when Pernod acquired them and they joined with Chivas Brothers in 2001. That's when really we started to see more single malt coming out of Aberlour. And then obviously a lot was being used for Chivas from that point forward as well. And then it really wasn't until 2002 that they modernized the visitor center, which is now again being gone through a whole nother renovation. As of 2014, which is a long time ago now, there were 3.5 million bottles of Aberlour was being sold. So not a small distillery. I am going to share a video real quick, just to give you kind of an idea of the distillery.
Green apple and then
Oh my God, why am I not seeing this?
red apples sit after.
Oh,
There
here
you
it
go.
is. Jeez.
What's the ABV?
We still got it.
So the whiskey that we're tasting, before I share my screen, the whiskey that we're tasting is a distillery exclusive. I did buy it at the distillery. It's a 15-year-old. It's definitely, I'm gonna guess, bourbon matured. It doesn't say on the bottle, but the color makes me think it's bourbon matured. It is only 48%, however. It's kind of interesting. It says American oak cask, so it doesn't tell you if it's bourbon or sherry cask, but it's American oak casks. 48%. It was kind of interesting. So sometime back in the day, we had bought some distillery exclusive bottlings from Aberlour that were cask strength, that were coming right out of the barrel.
And it was American oak.
And they had American oak, but they had sherry and bourbon. And I remember when we were tasting them, this is back in 2018. You might remember this, Dennis. We were tasting the sherry and the bourbon. The bourbon was fantastic. And bourbon cask is not the typical Aberlour. Aberlour, for the most part, like the Abhainn, all of these expressions are sherry focused. They are starting to trend a little bit bourbon-y with some of their other newer releases, but this one's 48%. So it's a little bit of a shame that it's not cask strength. They're obviously trying to make a little bit more money by adding some water to this. But let me just share my screen here and we can watch a little video on Aberlour.
Drink's warmer and left it cold enough. Yeah. It's not just a shot. Are you gonna try to sell something at this?
See, these were the old hat pills that we used to get. We did get a free hat, a bottle of the purchase of this bottle.
Glad you shared that with us.
Expansions all in the back. They're just going back. Okay, we don't need to watch the tasting. But yeah, so what do you guys think of this?
A lot of apples.
Apples?
Yeah.
Holly, you mentioned bubble gum or something on the nose or what?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the palate, I get like a fruit bubble gum.
Yeah, so this would like be the Alba. So Holly mentioned the Alba in the chat room. That's the bourbon expression from Aberlour. This is definitely bourbon.
Yeah.
There's no question. There's no sherry in this whatsoever.
An apple bubblegum flavor, though, I feel like is very strong, like very.
Yeah.
It is pronounced, even at 48%.
That's what I was thinking. Like it actually is pretty forward for 48%.
It's nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice.
It's actually, you know, for the water that was added, it's actually pretty well balanced at 48%. You know, I don't think it actually needs to be higher proof. It's already kind of sharp as it is at 48%.
Maybe that's why they did it. If it was because if the apple and bubblegum notes are so forward, if it came out at cask strength, it might have been a little bit much.
I don't think that's why they did it though. I think they're doing it across the board.
Wait for money?
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Yeah.
Do you know how many bottles were in this release?
Give shot photos first.
So this is bottle number 391. So
out of 12,000.
A small batch though, it's not a single cask.
yeah, all it says is distillery exclusive.
Yeah, I think just to give them a benefit of the doubt, since they're closed, and I feel like it's just easier to do a small batch distillery exclusive.
I'm sure it is. It's got to be.
Yeah.
It's probably a 4 or 5 barrels at least.
Yeah, just so that they can have it for visitors, since there's not much to see.
And it was reasonable. You know, I think it was 100 pounds. So for a distillery release exclusive, that's kind of what you're going to pay. And if you spend 100 pounds at the gift shop, you got a free hat.
Ooh.
So, and I didn't even know. I just got the free hat. The hat's upstairs.
There's no way.
It's got a green.
Oh.
It
wasn't that cute. That's why they're giving it away.
looks like Aberlour. It looks actually like a St. Patrick's Day hat, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it was not on brand.
No, not on brand. No, not on brand. That's probably why they were giving them away.
I'm also just jealous that I didn't get a hat, but
I might give it to you. I have enough hats now.
Training for a first fill t-shirt, sweatshirt.
Yeah, if I get a sweatshirt, maybe I'll give you a hat. How about that?
I'm getting an odd aftertaste.
An odd aftertaste.
Almost like I don't know, almost black licorice in some ways. There's something, I don't know, maybe I have the taste wrong, but there's something very pronounced.
you could get that from because bourbon has rye. I mean, we don't know what cask. I mean, think of whatever else was in it. I mean, there could definitely be some anise in. It's usually not common, but I mean, you could definitely get it from the barrel.
I'm getting something kind of in the back of my throat that is that different kind of flavor profile. I'm not going to
need words.
But it definitely is different.
It's not bad. It's just
I would almost think this is an American single malt. You know how like with Virginia distilling, you get that bubblegum kind of thread through them all. Yeah, if it was blind, I would think it was an American single malt.
Holly, did you ever have Bren, the French single malt?
Yeah, a long time ago, the cognac.
That same bubblegum stuff going on, but it wasn't anywhere near as full-bodied or smooth as this.
Probably much younger.
That French one is crazy bubble gum, way more than this, I think.
Right.
That one also had a little bit of Pepe Le Pew going on too.
You know, I've gotten the impression that Aberlour's core expression was modified in the last couple of 2 years or so.
Well, actually, since you say that, John, I totally agree with you. I think it's been longer than that, actually. I remember when I first was tasting Aberlour, I'm not talking about the Abhainn range, even though that has changed a little bit as well. But their core expressions have gotten weaker.
Yeah, I used to think that their 16 was just phenomenal, and now it's fine, but not phenomenal.
I have a new bottle of the 16 actually that they sent to me, and it's actually in my office here, and I was tasting it, and it's pretty light. Like you're losing a lot of the depth that Aberlour used to have. Now I don't know why that is. You know, it's the same proof. It's not just by adding water. I'm not sure. Something has changed though. You know, maybe their batches. You know, because those large core releases are thousands of barrels. They're not just 10 barrels. You know, so maybe their batch selection has changed.
Do they have a new blender?
I don't think so. I don't know. Holly, do you know if they have new blender with Pernod with Chivas at all?
They don't really talk about their blenders.
Yeah. All right.
Could it be that they changed where they make their cuts on the still?
It could be.
Make it-
It could be also just the.
Yeah, it's what stock they have available. If it's a 16-year-old that changed,
Climate change too.
what they made, you know, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, if they were laying down all hogsheads, then they're probably screwed right now. I mean, it's such a terrible forecasting plan. It's and yeah, they're probably just have stock, but it's not what they had built off of originally. Maybe that too.
So are we guys ready to move on to number 3?
We already have.
This is not a tasting to rush through. I'm just going to say right now, just because these are all going to be very different from each other. There's no verticality about this whatsoever. All right. So before we jump into this next one, a couple of things. One, you can't find this whiskey anywhere really. I had to actually have the distillery ship this to Gordon and MacPhail in Elgin so that I could pick it up. I'm not going to say anything, but Shalom's face right now is not a pleasing
I told him
face.
to air it
But
out,
my
and he
my-
dug right into it.
My face
Took the
is,
cap off.
that's just a general commentary on me though.
All right. So before we taste, or while we're tasting this, I'm gonna play a video because this video really explains what they're trying to do at this distillery. Now, let me just quickly, let me explain this, because this is one you're probably you're not gonna taste again for a long time because it doesn't come here. And who knows if it ever will come here. The name of, and I don't know if I'm saying it right, Dearg is how they're saying I should pronounce it. It means Red River Distillery. It's on the Isle of Lewis. So Lewis is way west of Skye. So really far west. This is as far west as you can go before you're heading to North America, basically. It's Scottish Gaelic for Red River, which takes its name from a bloody skirmish in the Dark Ages when local people won a battle against Viking marauders. Hold on, guys. Before you butcher the whiskey, hold on.
Smells like that.
Under the ownership of Mark Taburn, the distillery commenced production in September of 2008. So this is not an old distillery. It's only been around 16 years now. It was built in a former salmon hatchery
That explains a lot.
You shouldn't have said that.
And some of the, hold on, and some of the pens are still in use producing fish. All right, again, this is A to Z. This is a
Do they
journey.
use the same barrels?
Thicker pen. We're in this together.
Dennis looks like he's about to head to the
All
porcelain.
right, hold on. The still house is a new building and incorporates titled still heads and an unusual design modeled on former illicit stills in the area. The distillery uses water from a nearby loch, Round Nazgale via the Abhainn Dearg. The first whiskey was released in 2011 and was named the Spirit of Lewis. And then let's see here. We're drinking a 10-year-old. So this is their first 10-year-old single malt. This is a 10-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey at 46% ABV, non-chill filtered, natural cask color, single cask bottling, bottled by hand. This is truly a small production. And I'm going to play this video so you can have a better sense of what I'm talking about.
The whole time till I've had to sit and wait for this video.
All right, you got to watch the video because the video.
It's a salmon ladder.
The salmon swimming through the whiskey.
Yes.
Can we see the bottle?
Yeah, hold on. Let me see if I can figure out how to get to this video.
Just
How
went
do I
upstream.
hide this stupid?
There's a, settings and then high floating tools or floating bar.
There we go. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Mr. IT.
Looks like you know what you're doing.
Freaking hate Zoom.
All right, here we go.
Use Teams.
We definitely need closed captions on this.
And that's it.
Hold on.
The concept of the distillery was to produce a single malt Scotch whisky of Outer Hebridean origin. This distillery started producing spirit in August 2008. Before then, there was no legal distilleries in the whole of the Outer Hebrides. The term legal, it's an act of parliament that gave us the definition distillery or single malt Scotch whisky. And it was the first hearing of the act was in the 1820s. Before the 1820s, there was 2 known distilleries on the island, but there was a lot more whisky being made. Again, we have to remember there was no definition to make them illegal or legal, if you know where I'm coming from. So this is the first legal distillery ever in the Outer Hebrides. We're a small producer, and it's almost like a traditional distillery going back 100 years. Very small, reflecting on the region that the distillery's based in. Okay, the people, the type of peat and the maltings. You've got your malting shots, your water abstraction, and also the maturation. So all these things all these elements play a big part in the final product, as well as the people making the whiskey as well. Firstly, the site was chosen because of its location. You're right on the west coast of Lewis. Next stop is North America. Up there, we have no agriculture, we've no housing, we've no industry, we have nothing. Up the back where we draw our water from. The water is of a very, very high quality. It's very, very soft, and it's ideal for making single malt Scotch whisky. The other thing we have to be made aware of is maturation, where we are just now. These casks are breeding. They're roughly losing 2% of their alcohol strength per annum and a percentage of the bulk litres. That's going that away. Okay, it's very famous. There's even films about it. The Angels Share. Okay, the Angels Share. That's why all the angels are above Scotland, because of all the maturing whiskey or spirit. There's a big heather influence here. You're also right beside the beach. You've got a salty influence, and the mountains are right on the back as well. So it's a combination of all these environmentals that make up part or elements of the taste of the whiskey, as does the cask, the wood, as the fermentation, the type of yeast, and the type of mashing, type of water, and the type of distillation. You know, I would like to think what I'm giving you in a glass or in a bottle is a true reflection of the Outer Hebrides in liquid form. That's the taste I'm trying to give you. There's a sweetness to it. There's a slight peatiness and peatiness to the thing. There's a smokiness. I would say it's got a good roundness to it, as whiskey should be. As it's moving on, as it's getting close to the 10-year-old, it's developed a certain signature characteristic unique to the area. Whiskey,
right up there.
I think it's a great product of Scotland. It's something where we can support agriculture from the very start of the process with the plough. We're only borrowing the barley for a short period of time to take the good bits out of it, the sugar and the starch, to make whisky or whiskey in English. And then the waste products again go back to the animals, goes back into the ground. It's a nice tight circle. It's a nice circle. I know for in more recent times we've gone about the environment and renewables and recycling, but you know, the production of whiskey has traditionally been you're all tied into agriculture. Let's not forget, without agriculture, we ain't got it. And I think we lose a lot of that today. You know, it comes from the ground. The product comes from the ground, and then the waste, whether it's by a cow or by a whatever animal, goes back into the ground. So that cycle hasn't been broken at all.
Yeah, very interesting. It's not something I would be like, oh my God, I never want
I took two things that I love, dancing and golf, and I made them into.
Much better than that smells like. Right. Like rum fire.
So I'm curious what people think about this, because I'm getting a lot of shit from across me about how horrible this whiskey is.
It's not horrible.
No.
It's different.
Different, exactly. And that's what I was trying to get at. But when you use a certain standard and compare everything to that, you're going to have.
Well, standards get you in trouble, don't they?
Standards. Exactly. Open mind.
Have low standards.
I actually liked it. Not low standards, Dan, just multiple standards.
I actually, knowing how.
Add some water. I actually enjoyed it more. I know it's not cask strength, but I actually enjoyed the palate more with a few drops of water.
Okay.
Because the palate is where I got lost. The nose, you know, it had a nice, soft sweetness.
It does.
Flavored vodka.
What it reminds me of, just from the nose especially, is, and it's 10 years old, which is
Tired oak.
It doesn't match the age, I guess. It does come at me like as a craft, not new make, but a craft young whiskey that doesn't have the depth or maturity. Now, this is 10 years, which I'm surprised that it doesn't have more after 10 years, but
the mouthfeel gets better with water.
Yeah, actually.
But you can tell that it's tired oak. I would assume this is a lot of refill. And they're not getting a ton of oak interaction on an island like that. So 10 is not that old if you have a pretty cold climate. Without extreme temperature swings.
It's definitely not a whiskey that you're going to sit back and drink all night. But that's not why we're here.
It would take me all night to drink it.
Think of how few people have tasted this.
There you go.
No,
I have a really hard time getting past the nose. I think the nose is just
So mean.
the nose is really disgusting to me.
You're gonna act like it.
I
No
like the
sweetness
nose,
at all.
but
I mean, honestly, before you mentioned that they had salmon or whatever, I was thinking it smelled like low tide or dead fish or something.
The nose was tough at first. It is.
I am
Yeah, I thought the nose was the best
agrees.
part.
I like the nose. I can't describe it, and Ann's not helping me. So is Vinny the nose there? I need to get a couple of dozen adjectives for what I'm smelling.
He just said to me, if you landed on Scotland at this distillery, you'd probably go home.
Okay, thanks for the help.
That's about it.
Well, our next trip is to Lewis. It'll be our last trip ever.
If you want to shut down your business, just go to
No, that's not right. That's not right.
yeah. He was on the land.
All right. Well, again, this is all.
But that is one bottling from them. So like you said in the beginning, don't rule it out.
Exactly.
Are you saying you're bringing it up?
What was the strength on that?
I'm gonna go to Lewis. Now I actually really want to go to Lewis to figure out why it tastes
We have
like
a
this.
whole pallet. We have a whole pallet of cases on the way to first fill.
Exclusive US.
There's room on the shelf for it.
Ollie Dearg. It's our
You're
own
gonna-
private bottling.
Charles, you're gonna have to give away a lot of grab bags of bottles.
So was this, Charles, was this like what, 20, 25 euros a bottle?
All right, enough. No, we can't go down this path. This is not a good path to go down because
You have the hat.
so I ordered it from the distillery to have it shipped to another part of Scotland where I could pick it up because you can't find it. They make so small production that they literally just sell it to people who visit them.
And they do their own maltings. They probably make a few thousand liters of spirit per year.
Yeah, it's very small.
Yeah.
Well, the way the guy was acting,
Why you have
permission to
a holy shirt in an interview?
You are tasting the Isle of Lewis right now, literally.
Don't go there.
All right, so let me tell this last story before we move on. I wasn't gonna mention this story because I was hoping the whiskey was not gonna live up to the story's legend, but so we've become really good friends with Russell at Gordon MacPhail. He kind of is one of the people that runs the shop up in Elgin. Super nice guy, becoming really a good friend of ours. And I asked him, I said, hey, Russell, can I ship this to you? Because I don't know who else to ship it to. I was tempted to ship it to the hotel we were staying at, but I'd rather ship it to somebody I knew. And he said, sure. He said, what's coming? And I said, well, it's a bottle from Abhainn, Dearg, or however you say it. And he's like, oh, that is shite whiskey. I was like, well, I'm still going to have it shipped to you. And he's like, oh, okay, but
No worry about me drinking it.
But I asked him if he had this expression, and he hadn't. So I was, hopeful. And again, Scotland A to Z, you can't skip this distillery. This is part of the journey.
Yes, it is.
I'm sure it's not.
No, his best comment was you said, no, you explained the A to Z, and you said my whiskey club is doing this. And he goes, do you like your whiskey club? That's what he said.
All right, so you knew. I know. Yeah.
You gave me shit, Charles.
Yeah.
I actually don't think it's horrible. I think it's not great.
I've had worse.
Well, you
I
knew.
have had worse.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have had worse.
There's no question about it.
I'm going to Lewis to figure this out. So
I've dumped a bottle
bed was
down the
made
drain.
for We're waiting for the monograph.
You knew you might get some reactions like
Yeah.
this.
Of course I knew.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to rule it out. Like, you got to go in clean.
I had an open mind
Open
until I
mind.
tasted it.
I like the bottle.
It is a nice bottle.
It's got a hairy coup.
They use down
What's
wrapped
the-
barrels
what-
and down
The
wrapped
bottle
barrels.
has a hairy coup on the front, which is kind of nice, and a barrel.
Tony has this at a 38.
Tony
Well,
has.
they got that going for them.
All right. Enough bashing whiskey. That's not why we come here. But
Oh, is Tony on mine or?
No, but I know how Tony scores. He'd
Oh.
have this at a 38.
okay. All right. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. I knew this tasting was gonna take a while because it's one of those where we have to just kind of work through each whiskey.
Can I ask you a question? We're
Yeah.
A to Z and we're not even gonna get through all the A's. Like,
Oh,
this
no,
is-
there's-
A's gonna be the
Till
longest
next
part.
summer.
There's
You're gonna be
15
retired when we're
A's
done.
or
15 A's.
13
What about the
A's, yeah.
G's as Vinny brought
This
up?
is gonna be like a
That's a
4
year.
or 5 year journey.
Okay. Okay, so this is not a 12-month.
Well, hopefully we'll all be here by the end of the
Yeah,
journey.
exactly.
So that's our goal.
Make it to the end.
Make it to the end.
That's my last name.
Yeah.
I'll make it to the end. and then I'm out.
Gives us something to look.
All right. Okay, so this distillery, Alsabe, and again, I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Alsabe, yeah.
Alsabe, yeah, okay. It's a lowland distillery located in South Ayrshire, Scotland. Distillery is owned by William Grant and Sons. It was built to meet their needs for malt whiskey for their blends. The distillery was built near the site of Bourbon Distillery. So, Holly, can you help me with this? William Grant and Sons, would that be Grant?
Bhainne and Glenfiddich.
Well, what's the
And Grants.
Grant.
Yeah, Grants.
Grants?
Mhm.
So this would be a workhorse, I guess, for Grants, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I would
And
think
the joke is that it was their experimental distillery, but it's massive.
Okay.
It's huge.
so. It was officially founded in 2007. So again, a very young distillery. The opening was attended by Prince Charles in 2009. In March 2019, they released a new brand of Scotch whiskey, which was protected with blockchain technology to prevent counterfeiting. In September of 2019, Alsabe released Airstone, a new brand of single malt Scotch whiskey. William Grant and Sons says it's aimed at new whiskey drinkers that find established single malts like Glenfiddich and the Bhainne too complex with intimidating choice and language. I love that. That's pretty funny. All right, let me see my video here. I have a quick video on this one.
This is like a good intro to someone who wants to try peated scotch. It's like, it's really light.
I don't love the nose, but the taste is awesome.
Nose is
I
really
like
light.
Italian cured meat kind of peatiness for me.
Okay, here's a quick, it's just a minute.
Japanese peat.
Hi, I'm Brian Kinsman. I'm the master blender here at William Grant and Sons. I'm going to talk about Ailsa Bay Distillery. Ailsa Bay was built back in 2007, so it's relatively new. And it was built very much with a scientific approach to malt distilling, to bring a little bit more precision and technology into what's a very traditional process. From day one, the single malt that we wanted to release from the distillery was going to be peated. So we wanted real smoke notes. And smoke notes for me quite often mean slightly dry, quite astringent type whiskey. So this was about trying to really maximize the peat, but at the same time retain some sweetness. So we get a balance of peatiness and sweetness. I think we've achieved it. You know, that balance that you get when you taste the whiskey has all the smokiness, but also has a lovely aftertaste of sweetness. So I hope you enjoy it.
All right, so that was quick. You saw a very short image of the stills that they have there. They have
What do they have in that glass? The bottle was almost black in the glass by the bottle. That's not what we have in our glass.
No, I don't know. I didn't see that actually. They have, so they produce 12 million liters a year. So they're not, so the big producers produce 21, 22 million liters. Those like Glenfiddich, Glenlivet, they're the two biggest. So 12 is still a lot. 12 is a lot. 12 is not Aberfeldy or Aberlour. 12 is a whole nother level, that kind of intermediate size level. The sweet smoke, so this one's called Sweet Smoke Sweet Smoke 1.2.
ABV on this one?
The ABV on this is 48.9% ABV. I'm going to read a little bit about this release. This is the second release of Ailsa Bay single malt, which is named after the island of Ailsa Craig west of the Bourbon Distillery and the Firth of Clyde. The first release was not officially imported. Okay, this is called 1.2 Sweet Smoke. Is the first to make it here with the blessing of William Grants. The first was released in 2016. I'm not sure when this one was released, but 48.9%. Similar in the phenolic ppm. It's 22 ppm. So that's kind of that middle range ppm, but significantly higher in the sweetness ppm with 19 ppm compared to 11 in the first release. So they actually get into sweet and not sweet ppm, which is a really interesting kind of way to look at things. I'm trying to see if I can find info on that.
Are they in the lowlands?
Yes, they're in the lowlands. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so
How much was this? Yeah, this is nice.
So this one I bought, it's probably around $110, $120.
How much was the last one?
Same. It was around. Well,
They paid you 110 to take it.
It's a shipping.
I did.
May I see the bottle?
This one's delicious.
Let me just read a little bit about this. So, scientifically distilled to 22 parts peat, 19 parts sweet, then micro matured for a precise balance of sweet and smoky notes. Obviously, they're getting very technical now. They do have a QR code here.
So they're a lot like Waterford in terms of how they're doing things.
Of course, the site cannot be reached. That's a great QR code. Yeah, that's not working. All right, that's not good. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. Based in one of the most advanced distilleries in the world, we're an inquisitive team of scientists, engineers, and whiskey makers. Inspired by the creativity of science, we micro-control our SPPM, sweet parts per million, and PPPM, peat parts per million levels to push whiskey boundaries and invent new flavors. A modern whiskey for the inquisitive. That's what it says on the bottle. There you go. So Ailsa Bay. There's only been 2 releases by them so far. This is the second release. Have you seen this? Oh, Holly's not here.
What do you mean by they've only had 2 releases?
Yeah.
In their
Yep. Because most of it's used for making blends. They're part of Grants, which is a huge blend. Let's see if I can find out some more info.
Are blends more like predominant than
yes
in the world?
Oh, huge.
95%.
You're just a snob.
I'm really not.
Well, there isn't as many blend releases as there are everything else.
Right.
Drinking wine, yeah. There's only
like how many blends are there?
So this isn't.
Yeah, there are a lot of blends.
There's like 7,000.
But in terms of volume, blends are gigantic.
This is.
Where did you buy this again, Charles? At Gordon and MacPhail?
Yeah, I bought this at Gordon and MacPhail.
This isn't available in the States yet, right?
In what way?
So I was going to ask Holly, has this been available in the States at all?
I've never seen it, no.
Even the first release? No.
It's good.
It's good.
I think that both the nose and the palate remind me of paste. And I don't mean that in a negative way necessarily, but like white elementary school paste.
Right.
What's interesting is that we rarely, when you really think about it, you rarely get to taste something that's medium peated. Because everything's so polarized. It's unpeated or heavily peated. There's not and Highland Park doesn't count because it's like minuscule. I mean, there's not a lot that's middle of the road peated like
the
this.
vanilla and sea salt in this, and I get honey maple. I mean, it reminds me of like I mean, Colila is very smoky, but it's like it's like a lighter, creamier Colila. I mean, I actually like it a lot.
I'm trying to look up this sweet peat.
What's the one
stuff.
that she loves? The wicked funky one. Holly.
What do they mean by that? The sweet peat?
No, I think it's
Sweet and peated.
Huh?
Sweet and peated.
Sweet and peated.
Well, why is sweet?
He was saying that he
My
thought
tasting notes say sweet peat all the time. It's like when you get a sweetness with the smoke.
he was saying that he thinks a lot of peated whiskeys end up being really dry. So he was trying sweet and peated.
I know, but how do you do that though?
Like measure the.
Barrel.
It's science.
Barrel?
Yeah, science.
Yeah.
Okay.
Charles, not a scientist.
It's
It's a question.
It's like salted caramel, right?
They're not actually sweetening the peat. Is that what you think they're doing?
What makes it sweet?
You know what makes whiskey sweet.
No, what makes the peat sweet? They're calling
No,
it.
they're saying it's sweet peat, like a sweet peated whiskey.
Like, how do you measure that?
How do you
Is that-
measure
No,
sweetness
but
in parts per?
they're calling it SPPM.
Yes, sweetness parts per million. How do you measure that?
Well, they probably have their own scale, which means nothing.
Right.
The bricks.
They're
Maybe
gonna brand
measuring
it.
like the sugar in it or something like that,
So that might be just how long they're finishing it in something sweet.
or they're making shit up.
Compared to their other releases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that, the maturation side of it. It's more about
The barley.
the malting of it.
Yeah.
What makes it a sweet peat, I guess.
Can they measure
I
the?
mean, is it
Are
the,
they saying sweet peat or they're just saying how many parts
They're saying
per
how many
million
parts
of
phenol
sweetness?
per million of sugar. Like maybe they're measuring sugar content in the malted barley.
Well, I think it would be.
Which
Ollie?
doesn't equate to sweetness as a flavor. If
Here's-
they're doing that, that's just alcohol
Right.
Here's
conversion.
another one that I think is a mid-level peat that I'm pretty sure I got from you guys.
It's very like, it's like
yeah,
cereal milk at
Torabeg,
the end.
yeah.
Yeah. It's cool.
I think that's a mid-level peat.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great example, actually. I forgot about Torabeg.
Sweet.
That's what's fun about this, is you just never know, other than the shite whiskey,
What's
what you're gonna
taste
get.
like salmon and what's gonna taste like.
When you're the best, you didn't know till you're buying.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
slight, I have a slight preference for the Aberfeldy over. This is my second favorite of the four, though.
It is, John, with your paste, it's kind of like this,
Dirt.
like an ashy for me. It's got some ash quality to it.
Yeah, the smoke definitely plays a role in that paste.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me ask you this, Holly. If Alsa Bay is a workhorse for making blends, why are they making peated malt?
Oh, this is why they're deemed experimental, because this is all for them to play around and figure out how the science of it all.
Because
You know,
Grant peated, right? Grant's is like unpeated blend.
yeah, but I mean, they're really just investing in the science of production. You know, how can you make different styles and measure it, and
Do they make Valentine's
this is
too?
kind of
What's the clove? What's the one?
Mm-mm. No, Valentine's is Diageo.
It's really from acid. There's a 20th anniversary.
Who makes Cutty Sark?
It was Edrington, but didn't they sell it, Charles? Cutty Sark has been sold a lot in the last 5 years.
Glenturret was attached to them for a long time.
Yeah, someone new, I think, just bought them. But it was under the McAllen Highland Park umbrella for a long time, Cutty Sark, but they're not the owners now. They sold it.
I might need a little Abhainn to wash
They
my
went
palate.
really overboard with like the forcing the tech portion of this.
I like this Ailsa Bay.
But it's good, yeah, no.
Yeah, this is nice. I would, if I was trying to introduce someone to peated scotch, I'd say, here, try this. 'Cause it's a
Yeah.
lowly
No,
peated
totally.
scotch. It's
And
gentle
it's good
and.
on top of that.
What is this place in?
All right. Everybody good?
And this isn't available in the US, is it, Charles?
Not yet.
No. Okay, so just think about how our journey started with Aberfeldy back in the early 1800s, Aberlour mid 1800s, Dearg and Ailsa Bay all like in the early 2000s. Now we're going to, and I'm not sure if I'm butchering the name on this. I've heard lots of different things, but Altavan. Is that right, Holly?
Usually the B is a V.
A V, right?
Altavan. Yeah, Altavan, yeah.
Right.
Which is translates in the Irish anyway to milk.
So milk. Yeah, actually, so in Gaelic, Altavan means milk burn.
Interesting. Okay.
So when you have some expired milk and how it burns down your esophagus. Just kidding. All right. Altavan is a Speyside distillery. Some of you might have heard of it before. We've actually had it in the club like 4 or 5 years ago. And I think it was a SMWS bottling. It's located right down the road from Dufton. So it's right in the heart of Speyside. It's one of the newer distilleries, however, in the Speyside. It was built in 1975, right when things went to shit, basically, in the Speyside. It was the first distillery to be designed with modernity in mind. All the equipment is in one room, and the process from start to finish can be accomplished by one person. So they were really keeping this kind of modern thing going on. Altavan was built by Seagrams for the express purpose of providing bulk malt whiskey for Chivas Brothers. So again, we're talking blends. So, I mean, how often have we talked blends tonight? It's kind of a common theme. And I think we're going to find this as we go through this journey. There's very few distilleries that are making malt just for single malt. And we kind of have to remember that. It wasn't until 2018 that they released their first official bottling. It's the main ingredients in Chivas Regal blended Scotch. The distillery, like most, does not bottle on site. There was a short-lived single malt offering in the late 2010s, although it was on the market for only a few years. So you're only going to find this whiskey in independent bottlings. And when we went to Gordon MacPhail on this last trip, I was very happy to find an Altavan at Gordon MacPhail. This was not inexpensive. I think I'd have to look it up, but it was probably around $200. This is an 18-year Altavan. This is 59.8% ABV. All right. We're in a refill American hogshead. There were 324 bottles of this. The notes on the bottle say ripe green apple and mango aromas lead to clover honey, rich tropical fruit flavors intertwined with toasted almonds and flambéed banana, a medium-bodied finish with tangerine and mature oak. I have a very short video to share. It's just a drone video of the distillery. They don't have any videos inside the distillery. It's not open to the public. So we'll just quickly look at that.
Sounds like the cologne of an older man.
Here's the distillery. Again, think modern, even though it was 1970s.
I'd be okay with that view.
Very silent. Beautiful. All right, there you go. very short.
Clearly, they weren't allowed to go in, so they just did a drone.
There are no videos inside the distillery that I have found.
Mhm.
One of those that's kind of secret, but
324 bottles.
Ex-bourbon cast?
it's a refill hogshead.
Yeah, refill bourbon.
The elves were not so on
This is really good.
Yeah,
Very
this is
nice.
good, yeah.
Yeah.
My new favorite.
Well, all of a sudden we get cast strength and we're all like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is part of Gordon MacPhail's Connoisseur's Choice line, which is one of their higher lines. It's not their highest. They have an old and rare line, which is their most kind of expensive line, but this is right below it. It's some of their better whiskeys.
Right. For whatever reason. This is my highest score.
They just sell it.
So Charles, what you said, it's a burn, is it milk up the burn or a burn in?
Burren?
It's BURN. So water source usually. So a burn like a.
It's BURREN.
There's no burn. Or BRN is burn is the water source, so that's why.
No, but normal burns are BURN too in Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would they not make their own bottle?
Because they're again they're going into blends. Their primary purpose is to go into blends.
But then when someone comes and says, I'll give you $20,000 for that barrel, they're like, absolutely. I'm just asking. I
Yes.
mean, is that
Yes.
what
It's
it is?
easier for them.
Well, it was started by
the
the-
release or something like that. Like
What's
they're
that?
just-
It was started by
they're
the parent
moving-
company,
they're just
right?
Moving barrels.
They
So
didn't start and
it's
immediately
not-
sell to them. It was started
The
as
idea
a
of launching a brand.
off
somebody selling
of the
it
barrel.
is like-
Well, they were making whiskey for blends right out the gate.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
you have to, like,
You
actually
gotta
get it.
pay people.
Yeah.
get people
Especially
out
since
there.
they're owned by someone bigger.
Now, I'd be curious to see how many casks the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society had from Altamont. Because that's
Any
usually
distillery that was built in that wave of the 70s, it's that Mad Men era. So it was never to be a single malt. It was to keep pumping into blends and keep the blends going because blends were so popular. So like McDuff, I'm drawing a blank on, but there's about 15 distilleries that were built and it was all for the blends. It was never to be a single malt, which is interesting because a lot of Tormore is another one. We haven't seen them as brands.
But Holly, if they were made to go into blends, were they made to replicate a particular taste of an existing
Probably.
one that would go into a blend?
Yeah, probably. That'd be an interesting little. I know Robin Robinson, who we had up a couple years ago to the shop. He has a really cool old single malt roadmap, they used to call it, where if this is in a like some of the blenders would use it, if you know, if Altavan is not available, use this. It was like a roadmap that you could deviate, like this is the next closest thing. It was really cool. I'll have to see if I can get it from him. But yeah, probably. I don't know who they were trying to mimic. Actually at Aberfeldy, it was cool. They got rid of it, but in one of the warehouses, they used to have the oldest to date record of what the blend was. And it had the name of each distillery on the barrel, and there were about 40 barrels sitting in there. And 30 of the 40 barrels, the distilleries listed on them, I had never heard of. So these blends are evolving as distilleries close, open, you know, are available, not available. It was really interesting. So it's not stagnant. These blends are always being tweaked with new recipes.
Hey, Holly, you mentioned that it was never meant to be a single malt. If it was meant to be a single malt, what would they do differently? Would they be looking to?
You kind of froze, Charles, in your group.
Oh,
For me, at least. I don't know.
Yep.
I unmuted.
That's what she said.
Oh no, we were frozen.
Yeah, you were frozen.
Come on, Charles.
You are again.
You're frozen.
Frozen.
He's just still. Wrong fingers, Charles.
Okay, you're good.
Holly, if you said that some of these distilleries were never meant to be a single malt, if they were meant to be a single malt, what would they do differently Would they be looking for like higher quality grains? Would they be doing something like, what would they do differently if they're meant to be a single malt?
Well, just in the 70s, no one was meant to be a single malt. It was Glenfiddich was kind of, and Glenlivet were pioneering that, but it wasn't, no one was meant to be a single malt. It didn't mean anything.
I wasn't
Like
sure
as a brand.
differently if they're trying to do that, because like we are giving gratitude to like people that said like there's never supposed to be a single malt, but now we're drinking it as that, so that's cool. But are they doing something different, trying to be a single malt than not? Was my
No, it's really just marketing. I mean, you see in independent bottlers, right? Like we love this Altavan, and that's what I try and tell people at the shop is that like they're not inferior. It's just someone made a decision that this was going to be a brand and this wasn't. And actually it might mean they're superior because that meant they did not want to lose that malt at any cost to go into the blend.
Yeah.
So, you know, I kind of view it not superior, inferior, but it was so valuable to a blend that it could not be made a brand.
Well, what's interesting though is we have like, as we're tasting these IBs and tasting these workhorses that go into blends, we're finding some of them, like you just found on this last trip, that Longmorn was really in your, you became a real big fan of Longmore on this last trip. Now, that wasn't a distillery that you were looking for before this trip, but what we're finding is that as we taste through these workhorses, there's a big kind of cult following once they find these gems in the rough, right, that aren't released as single malts, and people are like, oh, I need more Dalyuan, I need more this or that, you know, because of these.
And I think that people feel like there was like a scheme of like, oh, this one is better, so we're going to make it a single malt. I think it was really haphazard, like each kind of company was like, this one's easier to pronounce, so that will be like, it was very, I don't think there was as much thought as we think behind it. It was more of, this is for our blends, we have this left over, what can we do to make money from it? I don't think it was as much of a thought of like, oh, this is the better one, so let's make it a single malt. I think it's just more of what you had and where it needed to be allocated.
Where is this story?
Well, they're in the Space Side, but I bought this bottle at Gordon MacPhail in Elgin. No, this is not something we can get.
You can't get the bottle because it's not, they
Here.
don't make it.
Now we get Gordon MacPhail,
but
but we do get their connoisseur's choice here in the States. It's just not everything comes here, and I don't think this is one that came here.
Because I've been a Longmorn fan for 20 years.
Yeah.
That was the first scotch. First time I went to Scotland, that's the first scotch I brought back. I've been a fan ever since.
Charles, who's behind Ben Romick? Is it Gordon MacPhail
Yeah.
or Hunter?
No, Gordon MacPhail.
Okay, that's what I thought. So so they now own
And the Cairn.
doing their
There's
own
another distillery called the Cairn, which is amazing, that we just visited, that Gordon MacPhail owns, which is.
So we'll taste them when we get to the seats.
That's how big.
No, they have no whiskey for that's matured old enough. They just started producing like a year ago. Maybe if it sees.
That'll be 2026.
All right. Anybody else have any questions on this Altavan before we move to our last whiskey?
Saving the best for last.
Greater than their.
Holly's nervous.
Clean those pallets for Holly.
All right, everybody eat chocolate.
Yeah.
Everybody have a
No, I've had some. I'm fine now.
have a cracker.
Can I show my screen, Charles?
What?
Or no, because I'm not. Can I show my screen or no, because I'm not a host?
I can see if I can make you a host.
Or wait, I see share screen. Oh, yeah, you have to give me I was just gonna show some photos of the distillery.
There is a way to do it. I just have to figure it out.
Maybe I can request from you.
Charles and I were.
It's not, you click on her name itself.
Oh, that might. Yeah, I can make you host. Your host.
Okay.
You're gonna have to switch.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna have to switch back to me when you're done so I
Yeah,
can stop
don't-
the video.
Good
Don't
luck
close
figuring it
out.
out.
You're in charge, Holly. Run with it.
Oh, let me make sure that I'm on the right page.
All right, all
Okay.
pressure right now is on Holly. I've never felt more pressure on Holly than ever.
It's not that much pressure.
We'll make it diamonds.
It's easy to talk about anCnoc.
It's a trick.
So we've got the 16.
Oh,
It's got their glass.
Whiskey number 3.
It smells better so far.
All that matters is that I like this whiskey. So this is actually was a very special bottle to me. It's my last full bottle. I had a couple bottles, but I've shared it a lot. But this is a discontinued release from anCnoc. And the distillery is NocDu, which is, it's just ridiculous to me that they felt like they needed to change their name because NocDu was down the road. Have any of you had NocDu?
Yes.
Yes, well, it's still rare. They should not have changed their name. But so NocDu Distillery releases anCnoc. anCnoc is the Gaelic form of the hill. So what they would have been called back in the day. But they're in Huntly, so they're kind of on the border of the Speyside region, but they're in the Highlands. And I love them because they're a worm tub distillery. So anyone that knows the style of whiskey that I like, they are worm tubs. But this is also a distillery that I visited in 2016, and I was studying for my certificate in distillation then. And they had just opened to the public. They don't have a visitor center. But they were allowing the public to come through. And I was one of the first people to write and ask if I could come through. And so I walked through alone with this guide who was also the school bus driver of Huntly. She did it part-time. And as I was walking around with my notebook, the distillery manager, Gordon Bruce, who's still there and is still a really good friend of mine, he has a very dry sense of humor, but he asked me if I was stealing secrets of the distillery. And I got really nervous. And he said, let's talk about what information you want. So we went back, the tour guide and I told him I was studying for the GCD. And he flat out told me, you're not going to pass unless you work at a distillery. And he said, do you want the 6 a.m. shift? I mean, I had just met this guy. So I was like, sure. Can you give me 2 weeks? Because I already have a trip to Ailsa planned. So I went to Ailsa, came back, and I actually got to work with the team at NocDu. And it really did help me pass my GCD. They're still all hands on. When people say that there's no automation, every single operator that I worked with at NocDu did it differently. They all had different cut points. That shows you the humans are a part of all of this in the flavor that we get. They all worked the distillery differently. And yeah, that's why I passed my GCD for sure, my distillation degree. So I just have quite an affinity for them, and I still keep in touch with actually everyone that I worked with there still works there, and I still keep in touch with all of them. So it's just really close to my heart for my whiskey career. But I have some photos of the distillery. This is full bourbon maturation too, which again, if you know me, I like worm tubs and bourbon maturation. So that's why this is my favorite style of whiskey. Their core range right now, they only have 2 pot stills. So it's very small production, around 1 to 2 million liters if they push it per year. The 12-year-old is about 70% ex-bourbon, some sherry, and the 18-year-old is almost full sherry. And actually, the 18-year-old's fairly hard to come by now. So this 16-year-old was discontinued 6 or 7 years ago. And I found a few bottles and bought as much of it as I could. And this is actually Gordon Bruce, the distillery manager's favorite release of anCnoc as well.
I must confess, Holly, I think you gave me.
Why was it?
We're at my house. And I tasted it, so I know I love it already.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I
Winnie.
tasted this the day that I met you when we were on our way to Isla. We swung by the Gordons and you gave us a tasting of this.
In 2017.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was all out of it. All right.
Why did they
So-
discontinue it if it's the distillery manager's favorite?
This is our, I don't know if you can see, but this was our group last year that went, and it was everyone's favorite distillery because we just hung out with, can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. In the back holding the bottle is Allie, which he's like the assistant distillery manager. So we were with him. We spent like 3 hours there. I don't know if I can, how do I go to the next one?
When the sun came out, it had been raining.
Let's see here. This is the warehouse that actually collapsed with snow. So this is us. They actually had people, they still, if you kind of look, you can see a little steering wheel in the middle. They still control the stills and the steam by a little wheel. So I remember working there, we would actually control the amount of steam going into the stills just by a wheel. So that shows you the human interaction. And they had everyone into the spirit safe. Allie went right into the spirit safe. So these are some of the operators that we were hanging. This is they have 6 washbacks. I think the video is going to be slow, so I won't show it, but these are the washbacks. They actually repurposed part of the old kiln to hold some extra they're like secondary washbacks for fermentation. They built them themselves actually. I want to show you the kiln. So they actually we tasted the beer right out of there. The wash. That's the mash tun, still a copper top mash tun. So here you can actually walk in the kiln, which I think is a really cool part of the distillery. They don't do their own maltings, but they don't have a visitor center. So they didn't, usually the kiln or the malting floor has been turned into the visitor center and like the bathrooms. But this is actually, the pagoda is where that light's coming from at the top. So the fire would have been below the floor, the graded floor that we're standing on. So all of the barley would have been laid out here. So you can actually still go into their kiln, which is pretty awesome. And then this is one of the operators that I worked with. I actually met up with him in New York City. Him and his family came over. So yeah, I'm good friends with a lot of the crew there, and I like their whiskey. So I'm not sure how to stop sharing my screen. Let's see here.
So you were there 4 years, is that right?
What's that?
You were there about 4 years?
I worked there for 4 years?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, here we go. No, I had to come back to America.
Can you make this again?
All right.
Because I need to end the video so I can record.
Oh, you want me to send it back to you? Okay.
Please.
No, seriously, how long was she there for?
No, you were there for a month or so, right?
Yeah, I worked it for a couple weeks.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, okay. Felt like a month.
Yeah.
How do I
Hard work.
make host? Okay, you should have it back.
What's the ABV on this one? Do we know?
46.
46.
And don't pull the table. Look at this.
I think it's beautiful. It's a really,
This is very nice.
yes.
Thank you for sharing.
And thank you, Holly. Toast to Holly
This
for
is delicious.
history, story, internship, and bottles.
Don't trust me to make your whiskey because I forgot it all too. Actually, the hardest part, at least for me, were the pumps, because you've got a 50-50 shot of pumping the wash or the beer or the low wines into the wrong vessel. And so to me, that was always the most nerve-wracking part of production, was you've got a 50-50 shot. And what Gordon, the distillery manager, always used to tell me He was like, well, if you mess it up, we're allowed 2 please forgive me letters to the crown so that we don't have to pay taxes on it. That's what he always used to say. He's like, we're allowed 2 please forgive us letters, because now everyone's taxed on the amount of barley that they bring in. So they know how much alcohol you can make. You know, that's why they don't need the taxmen sitting in the warehouse anymore. They know how much alcohol you can make, and you're taxed off of that. So yeah, he always used to joke that, oh, we've never had to write a forgive me letter, so you can be the first.
Talk about NOC though, like the family of distilleries that NOC belongs to, and how old the distillery is, and are they
So
used?
it's similar to Aberfeldy, that same time frame, late 1800s. The distillery was built. Still only 2 pot stills, has not really expanded. So everything that they make goes to single malts.
Okay.
So they're not going into blends.
Group?
The group includes Old Pulteney, which actually Gordon, the distillery manager of NOC, is from Wick, where Old Pulteney is, and started at Old Pulteney as an operator.
What's
so you've got the group?
Yeah.
It's called Inverhouse.
Inverhouse. Okay.
Yeah, Inverhouse. And owned by a Thailand group. So there are Old Pulteney, NOC, Speyburn, Bell Blair, and Belmenic.
Okay, Belmenic. Right.
All small distilleries, relatively.
Wait, Charles, ask her real quick. What is the distillery she likes with the funk?
What's your favorite funky distillery? Lucas is asking. Craigellachie, right?
Craigellachie,
right? He's just saying that.
No,
Craigellachie, although now I love Speyburn.
But Craigellachie is one that you've talked about in the past, right?
That's the one I own the most of. Yeah.
Speyburn was pretty awesome, I have to say. That was a pretty great.
I love anCnoc, but it's just very hard to find. You can find it sometimes in independent bottlers under NOC.
Right, I have some Cadenhead NOC that we got when we were in Campbelltown.
And
yeah.
I realized after I had asked for her bottle that I should have used that because.
Yeah, but that was sherry matured. This is way better.
Yeah. But you would have still had a bottle.
No, it's okay. What are all these bottles are sitting in storage? It was. Yeah, I'm glad to share it. Happy to share it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
We're glad you did.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna wrap up our first part. I think this was really wonderful.
Hey, did everyone like the anCnoc?
I'm super excited for this journey. I think this is like, I mean, for a whiskey nerd like me and a lot of other people, this is a pretty cool experiment.
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, of course, Dave was there.
And we're going to learn a lot as we go along. And again, the key is to remember one expression doesn't make or break the distillery. We had, and I don't want to talk negative, but one of the people on our group back then that did the A to Z, they used the A to Z to kind of rule out places they didn't want to taste from again. And I think that's completely wrong. Like, you've just got to be open-minded, try things. If you don't try things, you don't know. So this was really a lot of
Louis, here we come again.
So we will see you next time on our Scotland A to Z. And it's going to be actually in December. I know it's in the middle of a crazy time. But again, if you want to buy a kit and follow up later, you can do that as well. Just let's continue the journey and make this as fun as we can make it. So
this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, so cheers, everybody. I'm going to log off right now, and we'll see you soon.
All right.
That sounds
Thank you,
good.
Charles and Holly.
Thank you.
Great.
That's like cheesy.